To me, the best leaders are those who lead by example, those who are willing to work hard, to be a team with the people they work with, and to also learn from them. People willing to listen, people always looking to learn more and grow both professionally and personally. As a migrant journalist, the biggest obstacle I have faced is that companies often see my profile only as a visa and not as a professional and a person. This has often put me at a disadvantage when I try to advance in my career. My best advice for mid-career scientists who are listening to this video is to please don't stop trying, but also learn to be flexible. Sometimes a door closes and we have to try something different that we had never imagined we would try. And sometimes that is the best path. The best way to help women become catalysts of change in different contexts is by helping them believe that they can and teaching them how to advocate for themselves. Many women out there are not succeeding because they are unaware of their own talents. Creating mentoring programs, opening doors to them, are amazing great steps to start.
Welcome to the Catalyst of Change, Advancing Equity and Inclusion in Science. This seminar is in English with interpretation available in Spanish, French, and Hindi. You may select the language of your preference at the Zoom bar menu. This seminar will be recorded and made available on the CIMMYT YouTube channel. We will be hearing today from an outstanding leader in science communications, Myriam Vidal Valero, who is a science journalist covering environmental justice, health, and climate policy across the US and Latin America. Right after her presentation, Myriam Vidal Valero will have a conversation with Oyimbo Oyakilomen, agricultural economist at CIMMYT based in Nigeria, with research interest in design, scaling, and impact assessment of agricultural innovations and development interventions. We invite you to submit your questions and comments on the Slido tool to be addressed in the Q&A session right after the conversation. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Brian Goberts, Director General of CIMMYT, to officially open the event and introduce our distinguished speaker, Myriam Vidal Valero. Dr. Goberts, over to you.
Thank you, Isabel, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. This is August and a bright summer here in Mexico, which comes with sun. It unfortunately also comes with a lot of rain the past days. I hope you're fine wherever you are, and welcome once again to the Catalyst of Change seminar that is showcasing leaders who are advancing equity and inclusion in their organizations and communities. In this series, we highlight a diverse range of leaders, change makers, and allies of women, underrepresented geographies, and ethnicities, different abled people, indigenous communities, and other often unheard voices in agricultural science, innovation, and development. Equity and inclusion in leadership are essential for building effective, ethical, and future-ready organizations. By highlighting diverse leaders who put equity and inclusion at the center of their leadership, we therefore aim to provide role models and improve our own institutional leadership, because you can't be what you can see. Inclusive leaders bring people with different experiences and worldviews into decision-making, which results in more innovative solutions, greater ability to anticipate risks and unintended consequences, and better representation of stakeholder needs. And let that be exactly what we need in these unprecedented times. Unprecedented times for the world, unprecedented times for CIMMYT, but also huge opportunities, as CIMMYT has what many organizations do not have, which is a diverse pool of talent, which is you that makes the difference every day. And therefore, in order to make a better version of ourselves as an organization, but also as professionals, we are at this point inviting CEOs, ambassadors, and world-renowned scientists to speak at Catalyst of Change. We have invited young professionals, representatives of indigenous communities, science communicators, human resource professionals, project managers, and differently abled professionals. Therefore, today, we have at our Catalyst of Change, Myriam Vidal Valero. She's a science journalist covering environmental justice, health, and climate policy across the US and Latin America. Her work has appeared in outlets including the New York Times, Nature, Inside Climate News, and El País, and has explored issues such as air pollution, climate geoengineering, and climate justice. Vidal's reporting draws on her deep experience working at the intersection of science, policy, and human rights, with a commitment to accessible, impactful journalism. Before becoming a freelance journalist, Vidal taught science communication to children and teenagers at Universum, Mexico's autonomous university, UNAM, its science museum, and later wrote about UNAM's cutting-edge research for its official gazette, Ciencia de la UNAM. She also spent 3 years at Medscape en Español, covering health and medicine for Latin American and US audiences. Vidal is a part of the Mexican network of science journalists, where she co-leads a mentoring program for emerging journalists. She holds a master's in journalism from the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at the City University of New York. And Myriam Vidal Valero, therefore, is a true catalyst of change with her pen, with her mentorship, with her seminars. Myriam Vidal Valero will have a conversation with our own one and only Oyimbo Oyakuliomen, agricultural economist at CIMEC, with research interests in design, scaling, and impact assessment of agriculture innovation and development interventions. Oyimbo holds a PhD in agricultural economics from the University of Leuven, Belgium. Before joining CIMEC, he was a postdoctoral researcher at the Department of Economics of the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences and a senior lecturer at the Department of Agriculture Economics of the Ahmadu Bello University in Nigeria, and a short-term consultant to IITA, IFPRI, and ICRISAT. With that, now, without further ado, please welcome once again today's catalyst of change, Myriam Vidal Valero. Over to you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for that very warm introduction. I'm going to start by saying that I'm very honored, and at the same time, it's very strange to me to be sitting here and being considered as a catalyst for change, because the way that I see my career, it's basically a long story of things not going my way. And things and me having to recalculate and try to figure out, a new path. So that's what I'm going to be talking to you right now. I'm going to be telling you some stories of how things didn't go my way and how I'm really grateful that they didn't. So as you mentioned, like I have at this point, I have over 10 years working in science communication, but when I was in college, that was not my dream. I actually dream of being a storyteller. I have always been a storyteller, but I wanted to be a filmmaker. I didn't have the money to pay for the filmmaking school here in Mexico, so I decided to go to public school, UNAM, instead. And I went to the School of Political and Social Sciences because they had like an audiovisual production program. And I still remember my first day of classes. I was in that really big classroom with over 60 people, young like me, and they asked us, like, why are you here? What do you want to be? And I was like, well, I hate politics. The last thing that I want to do is a journalist. I'm here because I want to be a filmmaker. And I still can remember, the looks that I got from everyone in that room. They were looking at me like, girl, you're in the wrong place. And as it turned out to be, at the time, I felt that I was in the wrong place, but unknowingly, I was in the right place. So that is just one example of many that I have in which my career didn't go the right way. I did study the audiovisual production track. I realized that I didn't like it. I realized that as a filmmaker, I was not going to cut it. So after 4 years of studying communications, I was out in the world with a degree I didn't know what to do with. And while trying to figure out my next step, I learned that the Science Museum at my university, Universum, they had a fellowship. It was a 2-year fellowship, and basically they paid us to work at the museum. So I took it out of desperation, to be honestly. I didn't know what else to do. And I started working, giving guided tours at the museum. And that's when things started to unfold. I fell in love with science. And I, again, regretted that before college, I didn't have a good science teacher.
I regretted not studying science. I regretted, me choosing the wrong path because I wanted to continue working in science and I didn't know how. And I spent there a year and a half, and just about 6 months before my fellowship was about to be over, a journalist whom I have met at the different workshops that the museum gave, out of the blue, he suddenly contacted me. He reached out to me and he was like, "Hey, we know each other. I see that you're a very passionate person about science. Someone in my team, in my magazine, just quit. Would you like to have a job as a science journalist in my magazine?" And I was like, okay. Again, the big irony, because I always told myself that I would never be a journalist. But again, I was desperate and I didn't know what else to do. So this looked like a good opportunity for me to continue working with science. And I took it. And that's when I found my passion. And when I say I found my passion, I'm going to say that my passion found me. Along the way in my professional track, and you're going to see this with several of the stories that I'm going to be telling you, the reason why I think I'm here right now talking to you is because there have been people in my life who believed in me even before I believed in me. So they started opening doors for me. Once I started working in the magazine, my mentor told me that I needed to join the Mexican Network of Science Journalists. It was a new network back then. It was, I think, 2 years since it had been founded. And once I joined the network, I started seeing that there was a really big world out there of science communication, that I could actually make a career out of this, out of the things that I found as my passion, just learning about science every day, communicating science, helping people understand why science it's important, how science can help us shape the world, how can it help us understand the world, how can it help us take better choices, make better choices. And when I joined the network, I started realizing that some of my friends, colleagues in the network, they were studying master degrees in the United States. I quickly saw that the United States was the place that I needed to be if I wanted to become the best in my field. So I started following them. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to apply to a master's degree. I'm ready. I'm going to ask for a scholarship. I don't have the money to pay for this myself. I put all my heart and soul into this. And my acceptance letter for the master's degree came in March of 2020. So I'm sure that date sounds familiar to you. A little bit about after I got my acceptance and I actually traveled to New York to visit the universities that I had being accepted to, the world shut down. Once again, life was not going my way. The pandemic had me stuck in Mexico 1 year, and I felt that my career was basically over. I felt that I was getting behind. I saw all my colleagues who they were getting these amazing jobs. I was trying to do my job without having the right contacts. I was trying to do my job covering a pandemic without having medical insurance here in Mexico, trying to figure out how to find the stories that editors were interested in that back then were all COVID stories and me not knowing up from down, trying to figure out if I was going to go to the masters at all, because at that point we were not sure how long the pandemic was going to last. And again, I'm very grateful that I actually got laid back for 1 year, because that gave me time to apply for more scholarships, that gave me time to save more money, that gave me time to prepare for what was about to come. Once I finally made it to New York in 2021, it was kind of like a strange format. I was a student in a pandemic, non-pandemic world. As an immigrant in the United States, as an international student, I also had to face different hurdles that not all of the students had to face. For starters, I didn't have full tuition. The tuition that I had to pay was more expensive. I was not allowed to work like the rest of my peers, except that the work reflected the things that I was learning. It was a lot of bureaucracy. It was a lot of paperwork that I needed to fill just to publish a story. So I felt that I was, again, getting behind because I couldn't compete, because my peers were publishing these amazing breaking news stories. and I couldn't because I needed to get all this paperwork signed first. I started facing rejection also from different companies who were a little bit eerie on hiring me because they were afraid of the visa challenges. It didn't matter how much I explained to them that it was very easy, that the process was like, just sign this paperwork. I got stories rejected because they wouldn't sign the paperwork. I was working and I was studying, so it was a very tiresome experience. But at the same time, I also found people who, again, believed in me and they were helping me and they were trying to figure out the system with me. A teacher actually there, she saw me that I was very distraught once because I knew that I had a really amazing story that I wanted to publish, but the magazine wouldn't sign the paper. And then when she saw me, she realized that there was a really big world out there of things that she didn't understand about the international students in the school. She was in charge actually of trying to make of a committee to make life for international students better in campus. So she brought me to that committee to try to brainstorm ideas on how to make life easier for international students. Something that I have kept trying to do since after, every time that a student, aspiring student from a university reaches out to me, like, I'm really interested in working in this program. Did you like it? What were the challenges? I try to show them, like, yes, there are going to be challenges, but this is the way that you can solve them. This is the way that you can beat the system. This is the way that you can understand how to survive in this world that is not meant or not designed for us. Again, the last example and the last story that I'm going to tell you about things not going my way happened in 2023. And this was because after I finished my master's, I knew that I wanted to stay in the US. I knew that the whole goal for me to go into the master's was to get a job in the US and continue growing in my career. But I couldn't get a job on time that would sign my student visa. So I had to, as we say, self-deport and come back to Mexico, where I am right now. I'm working as a freelance journalist while waiting for my visa and other things to happen. But again, I am really grateful that this happened because that allowed me to put my thoughts in order, to try to work on my health, because my health suffered a lot of when I was in the US with all of this anxiety, to reconnect with my family, to reconnect with my roots, and to continue working on the things I love. Now, the reason why I am telling you all of these stories of things not going my way, it's because I do believe that journalists and scientists, we have a lot of things in common. We both need to thrive and need to survive in a world that is full of uncertainty. For you, it's, whether the experiment is going to be statistically significant. For me, is whether a source in my daily job is going to answer my phone call and give me the interview that I need to deliver my article and, meet my deadline on time. If we go to the bigger things, I'm assuming you apply, all of you apply constantly for grants and are waiting for scholarships and to get a job. You're thinking maybe, like, if I'm going to stay in this job long enough, where my research is going. The same happens for me. I right now I am an independent journalist, so I'm always looking for more stories, more work to sell. I need to be constantly in the map, like I need to publish the same way that you need to publish. We know that sometimes publishing is the best way for us to be noticed. Yeah, I wish that wouldn't be the case, but that's basically what we need to do. We need to be constantly working like this hamster in a wheel. And along the way, I have seen and I have heard from many scientists who became journalists, like science journalists, and from many journalists, that the path can be filled with anxiety, with fear, with insecurities, even more so if you don't have the particular context and background and experience that the world is asking from you. I know that I have the talent, but if I don't have the right paperwork, I know that I'm going to be having that my path is going to be taking longer. I know that I need to work twice as hard, even more so, to get the opportunities that I want. thinking about how to become a catalyst for change, I think it's very important for all of us to remember this. Even if we don't win a Pulitzer or the Nobel Prize, that doesn't mean that we cannot change the world around us. And I think that sometimes the biggest influence and that the biggest changes, the biggest impact happened in our small groups, in our small spheres of work, of knowledge. But last year when I came back to Mexico and I didn't know up from down. I was very low in self-confidence. I didn't know that I could pull myself back up from what I felt was a really, really big fall. Me living my dream life, and suddenly I lost everything and I came back. And I didn't know how to reach out to editors. I didn't know how to start finding stories. The mountain looked really, really big to me to climb again, because I felt that I was on top and suddenly I was, at the beginning. And I remember vividly having a conversation with one of my peers and one of my best friends. She's also a journalist, telling her, how I was feeling. And without questioning, she just told me, I'm going to mentor you. I am going to help you. At that point, I think she made me cry because I was like really, really desperate. And she just, without me asking, she extended a hand to me. We started working weekly. She reviewed my pitches. She told me how to get a structure of work. She told me how to find the stories. She basically reminded me of all of the things that I knew how to do, but I didn't believe anymore that I could do. And before I knew it, I was out there in the world again. I was pitching stories again. I was getting all the contacts and all the paperwork that I needed again to file for my visa. I was happy again working. And that is something that I try to bring also in my daily life. I know that there are amazing people who have mentored me and believed in me and made sure that I understood that being different didn't mean that I was less than. It just meant that I had more things to offer. Me being a migrant journalist, for example, gives me the ability to see the world differently. When I'm covering a health story, I understand, for example, on migrants or on people who are really stressed out. I understand, for example, that body and mind are the same because I experienced it. I understand if someone is getting sick, maybe that's a reflection of how their mental health is. And I can try to find these angles and connect with these communities that are often overlooked because I speak two languages, because I have different life experiences. And that is a superpower. But we need people in our life to make us believe and help us see that we have that much to offer and to help us get up again when life doesn't work the way that we wanted to in the beginning. So we build success together. If you have a colleague around you, if you see a woman around you, someone from a diverse background who is really struggling, and you open a door for them, the same way that my friend is opening doors for me, which, by the way, my friend, she's also a person of color. She's also a migrant journalist, and she works so hard to help people go through easily through the doors that she had to break. If we can do that for each other, we can elevate each other. And I think that's the beautiful thing about life being a challenge. Like we grow and we understand ourselves more when we are facing challenging situations. And my last message for this conversation, for this talk, because my time is about to be over, is that with all of the things that didn't go my way through my career, a career that I'm still building, a career that I'm sure is going to continue changing and that is changing as I speak, there is always a path for opportunity. Opportunity to learn more about ourselves, to learn more about the people that we surround ourselves with, to learn more about our networks, to learn more about how we can create new networks. Something, for example, that I do with the Mexican Network of Science Journalists, I try to help mentor, early career journalists because I want for their path to be easier than mine. The same way that day my editor called me and offered me that first job. If I didn't have that call, I wouldn't be here. And I'm so grateful that things didn't go my way. You know, if I think back then when I wanted to be a filmmaker, I is now that I'm happier and I feel more at ease and more fulfilled telling the stories of the real world and helping shape people's vision about it and showing how we can better it than just sitting there and trying to imagine new worlds. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, the creative work, the arts are amazing, and I found so much answers in them. But working with science and working as a journalist, the two things that I never knew that I could love, the two things that I either hated and didn't understand, because I didn't study science, not because I didn't like it, but because I didn't understand it. I never thought that I could be good for it. It's the biggest irony of my life, but it's also the biggest lesson. So if you want to make change and if things are suddenly not going your way, be patient. Try to stay open to new opportunities. Try to stay open to new paths. You never know if that path is going to be better than the one that you had imagined. And maybe sometimes a door closes for a particular reason. And try to stay at ease. You know, we're all in this together. Just go find solace in your network and keep going. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Miriam. So, Jimbo, you can introduce yourself and have this interesting conversation with Miriam. Very, very emotive message. Thank you so much.
Yeah, once again, thank you very much, Myriam, for the very insightful presentation. And hello to everyone. My name is Oyimbo Oyakilomen, and I'm so delighted to interview Myriam to get a better sense of her journey into journalism and also some thoughts around equity and inclusion in her journey. So to kickstart the interview, it is quite interesting to note that at some point you wanted to be a filmmaker, but you ended up becoming a journalist. So on a lighter note, I would want to ask if you had a second opportunity of becoming a filmmaker, would you always choose journalism over filmmaking? And what could be the reason if you have to choose journalism once again over filmmaking?
No question asked. You know, like I would choose journalism every day. I am in love with what I do, and the reason is that I love learning. And I always love learning. But again, you know, my insecurities and not having the right support made me think that I was not good at it. But now things have changed. So that's, you know, working as a journalist, I help. I think that I can help the world see things in a different way. I connect with so many amazing people. I learn from them, even the scientists, you know, working for CIMMYT. So yeah, journalism all the time.
Yeah, okay, great. So it's interesting to note that you encountered a number of challenges along your career path, and you highlighted some of them, including rejections, anxiety, low confidence. So I just want to get a better sense of how you were able to overcome these challenges, because these are life-threatening challenges that we often face every day.
Well, for me, the best way to overcome the challenges is to see them, you know, face to face, to look at them at the eye and understand that these challenges are also opportunities. That doesn't mean that it's always easy. You know, when I'm in the middle of the challenge, the first thing that I do sometimes is panic. And then after panicking, I cry a little bit. And after, you know, I stabilize myself a little bit more, I realize that all of the challenges that I have faced allowed me to become and understand how creative I can be. So I think that's the best way that I have. I either ask for help because I think that's very important, especially if you have a strong network. But at the same time, it's like, okay, this is not working out. What else? What else I can do? Who else I can reach to? You know, like how can I solve this? What job I can apply to that I haven't applied to, etc., etc. And the more you move, but the more you move consciously, not in anxiety. It's very different to be moving in anxiety and just not knowing where to go, than being really self-aware and breathe and just like continue moving, like, okay, step 1, steps 2, step 3. And the more I do it, the more doors start to open and the more things start to evolve and move.
Interesting. So let's just dive a bit into equity and inclusion. So, of course, there's a rapid interest in advancing equity and inclusion in different disciplines. But I just want to get a sense, in journalism, is equity and inclusion really critical?
I'm not sure if it's really critical, but I think there's still a lot of work to do still. Again, equity, you know, in my experience, a lot of companies see equity as a box that they need to check instead of actually living by the true values of equity. So, you know, they try to hire people, you know, who meet, you know, the checkbox, but they don't take the time to really understand, you know, where that person is coming from, the experiences that person is bringing, the challenges that maybe that person is facing. And when it becomes a time to advance in your career, you realize that you're not advancing maybe as fast as you wish, because one thing is that the company has the DEI checkbox, and the other is that they actually have the internal bylaws to allow for that advancement to happen. And I think that's where change needs to continue happening. It's not just realizing that you need to hire a journalist of color, a women journalist, a queer journalist. It's realizing that you actually need to change the way that your whole law book is structured around them. You know, if you're going to hire someone who has a disability, for example, then you need to be able to provide them the tools necessary for them to thrive in that particular workspace. If you are going to hire someone of color as an intern, then you need to make sure that that intern can actually compete with the rest of all the interns to get a job. And that's not always the case.
Interesting. So in your experience, would you say trust in science, because it's a key issue, but would you consider trust in science as increasing or decreasing over time? And in your own opinion, how has that impacted your work?
Honestly, I think, sadly, trust in science is becoming a major challenge every day, mainly because, you know, we have a lot of social networks and also the artificial intelligence. They are creating this really big void of misinformation. And, you know, as misinformation happens, you have these hubs of audiences. You know, you group audiences together who believe in the same thing, and you have all these conspiracy theories, and you have all of these people who are not maybe as open to listen on how different on different perspectives of how the world could work. A good example, for example, it's how people have stopped believing more and more on vaccines. Something that I find very frightening, honestly, you know, because there's all the evidence, but people don't believe in the evidence because, again, they're exposed to all of this misinformation. The way that in which that has shaped my daily work is that I'm trying, and I believe that a lot of journalists who are really committed about fighting misinformation are also trying to go to where these people are and try to bring them the information that they need. It's not always easy. It's not always effective. It's making us become more creative professionals, more creative storytellers, do more audience engagement. It's a process. I'm not sure that we have won the battle, but you know, it's something that we need to continue doing every day, and we need to fight.
Yeah, great. Okay, so would you say there's a relationship between trust in science and equity, and as well as inclusion?
Well, I believe that there is, yes, a relationship, maybe not as direct as you know, it could look. in my experience, the best way to earn trust, at least with your close sources, is because in journalism you have two ways of trust. You have the trust that you need to build with the sources that you are interviewing, that you're working with, and then it's the trust that you need to be building with the audience. Usually, as a journalist, I have more control over the first one than the latter. For me to be building trust with my sources, it starts from a place of respect. Like, I understand that you're a person, you're not a source, you're someone who has a story to tell, but you're not a means to an end to me. Like, I am really interested in your story, and I survive in telling your stories, but at the same time, I really care about your story, and my job is to elevate your story so other people can learn from it. So I want to be working as a team with you. I'm not here to exploit you. And when it comes to the trust that you build with audiences, that's more difficult to build because there is so much noise in between. Like, I can give a message, but then the source, the audience, they can either receive it or not. They are influenced, by whom they're discussing that message with. Like, if I write an article, I am not in every table with every family who is reading my work, discussing of whether they liked it or not, or whether they found my explanation of why floods are happening and why pollution is impacting the atmosphere believable enough. So I can try to engage with them in the places where they are at, social networks, but I would say that's even more difficult to build, and the best way to build it is to do my job ethically and to try to bring them the more accurate information.
Great. So during your presentation, you highlighted the role of mentorship. So I just want to follow up. To what extent do you think the mentor you interacted with shaped your career path?
I think she shaped my career path immensely. And I'm going to say, I have been very lucky that she was not the only mentor that I have had. Since the beginning of my career, I've had so many different mentors, mentors from even either peers, editors, teachers. And every time that I'm doubting myself, every time that I feel that I can't access a door, some mentors, they didn't maybe work with me in my self-confidence, but they did open doors to me. And that door led to something different. So mentoring to me, it's a crucial part of my journey. And that's why I put so much emphasis in me also becoming a mentor. And it's something that I love. At some point, I wish that I could become a teacher because I really hope that I can help more young people like me to thrive in something that they love.
Yeah, interesting. So in terms of your working space, have you had any challenges as a young professional working with probably a senior journalist, and how were you able to overcome if any of such challenges?
Yes, I've had some challenges. Mostly all of the editors and people that I have worked with, they have been amazing, but I have also faced editors who ignored me, who didn't take the time to really mentor me, didn't take the time to check my work, or, it's difficult sometimes. Organizations are facing their own internal challenges, and, these things happen. I think so far what I have done, and I am not going to say that this is the perfect answer because I do believe that I could have done things better in hindsight. But I try to find comfort and I try to find help in other people within the organization that I trust. So it's like, when I face these challenges, I went to a colleague of mine. She was also a journalist. She was on staff. She was not an intern the way that I was at the time. And I told her, like, I'm facing this challenge. I am not really sure how to talk to this person. I don't want to close this door for me. I want to continue working with this organization. But at the same time, I am afraid that if I say something, they are not going to want to work with me because I'm going to become the troublemaker. How can I navigate this? And she couldn't really solve the fact that they were not maybe taking a look at my work in the way that I wanted to, but she did make sure that I was getting the help that I needed to get out of that internship with something. So she started working with me. She started giving me tips. Sometimes it's not perfect. The best way that I always have is to talk things openly, and sometimes that can be scary because, again, when you're young and when you're trying to build a career, for trust to happen, the leaders, they also need to be open to hear you out. And sometimes the atmosphere is not built that way. Sometimes the best way you have to salvage those obstacles is to just be brave, I would say, and to be very self-aware, and to be really strong with your convictions, and say, okay, I know that I have this value. I know that I am smart. I know that I'm bringing all these things to the organization. I need to talk to them and see what happens. I'm going to do it very respectfully, just to try to open the conversation. And sometimes it's going to go well. Sometimes it's not going to go well. But sometimes you opening that conversation, being brave enough to open it, even if it doesn't go the best for you, maybe you're opening a door for the next person that's coming after you.
Great. So it's been nice talking to you. So my last question for you is, what advice do you have for early and mid-career scientists, as well as science communicators in promoting effective science engagement, building trust in science, as well as advancing equity and inclusion?
First, I would say hang in there, because I know that this is not an easy path to choose. I do believe that, again, scientists and science communicators, I think that what we share in common is that we both chose this very difficult path because we love it. And it's something we feel passionate about. And once you're passionate about something, it's much easier for you to share it with other people. For science, for young scientists, for example, what I could say, whenever maybe a journalist like me tries to reach out to you, try to take the time to talk to us, try to take the time to also communicate your own research. I know sometimes it can be daunting when you're not used to communicating things. You like to be in your work and that's it. But the best way to build trust is to, build this outreach, like go out there, talk to people, talk to neighbors, talk to your family about the research that you're doing, try to explain it to them. Just reach out to your local journalist and, hey, try to open a conversation, even if it's just a friendly conversation. We can work as a team. You're both of us from our particular trenches. But again, we're parts of a whole. And if we learn how to communicate with each other, and for science communicators, I think it's very important that you also realize that you have an enormous power within you. You have the power to shape reality, and you also have the power to spread misinformation if you do your work wrongly. Mistakes can happen, yes, but try to correct them. Try to fact check everything that you write about with the scientists that you're working with. Try to make sure that you're understanding things correctly. If you make a mistake, clarify it, please. I think it's very important, even if it's after the fact. Clarification is important. And just I would say keep going.
So I think we can open up the session for questions from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jimbo, for having this exciting and stimulating conversation with Myriam. We invite the audience to participate in the open Q&A session, and be ready to raise your hand, open your micro and your camera. Also, you are invited to submit questions via Slido for our distinguished speaker of today. So our first question is, this is about communication. Yes. How do you explain the importance of science writer for CIMIC communications team, especially the need for communicators with a science background?
Well, that's a hard one because I don't have a science background. But I would say that the importance of communication, whenever I try to talk to scientists, is that you're as a scientist, and this is something that I deal with every day. You're working with very complex concepts and topics and issues that for you they become so familiar that you stop realizing that they are complex. and learning how to communicate them effectively, learning how to bring them down for the general audience. I think that's a beautiful skill to have, because that helps people understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why it's important. You become the story, and you and your research become the story, and you explain to people why you can change the world with this in a way, and learning how to basically explain yourselves. I think that's an amazing skill. And even when you're talking to journalists, I can really tell when there's a scientist who has experience giving interviews, because they understand. Even they ask me sometimes, like, what's your background in chemistry? What is your background in atmospheric science? They try to evaluate whether, if I'm a scientist, I'm not a scientist, how much I'm going to understand, to see how they are going to break down the concepts to me.
Thank you so much. What is your advice to young women in the Global South who has the passion but could not follow it due to the challenge of getting opportunities?
That, I think, my best advice, first of all, is to stay with your passion as much as you can. I have been lucky enough that I have had people help me, but I would also advise you to try to reach out to the people who are already there. Sometimes the best way to find a mentor is that you need to go out there and look for them. I have done that several times. Also in my life, I have told many stories of how mentors came my way, but I also reached out to people at some times, and they were willing enough to help me. You're gonna maybe face rejections along the way. Yes, you can reach out to many people, and maybe they are not going to answer your email. That doesn't mean that you're not worthy enough. That doesn't mean that all things considered are over. But it just means that you need to keep trying. And I would also advise that you try to reach out to try to find the people like you in your community who are also wanting to do something, uh, who want to do the same thing, and try to figure out ways in which you can support each other. Try to find maybe the local networks, like, for example, here in Mexico, we have the Mexican Network of Science Journalists. But there are also different networks of science journalists across Latin America. And between networks, we try to build like a bigger network, and that's why we try to stay connected, and we try to help each other, because every country is facing different challenges. So either build a network, find the people who are working on these networks, don't get discouraged. And a more practical advice is also to remember to be practical. Sometimes we have to, and I have done it too. Sometimes I have to do things that I don't love necessarily, and I know that I'm going to be doing it temporarily, while I try to figure out my next step. Life is a give and take, and you need to be flexible, but that doesn't mean that you forget what you're passionate about.
Thank you. Did you face any challenges for being a woman in your profession?
Yes, I would say yes. And it's very curious, like I know that I faced the challenges, but I don't have the metric to say that that was a particular challenge. I could say, for example, that based on my experience, from the different peers of people from the Mexican network, for example, who went to do masters in the US, the ones who actually have a job right now are men, like a steady job. I'm not gonna say, and a steady job in journalism, that doesn't mean that I'm not gonna get it. That doesn't mean that I didn't get it because I was a woman. It's just something that I think about sometimes, like, like it's not it's not always really straightforward. Particularly in journalism, I think a big challenge that I face is the challenge of security. Back in 2019, before the pandemic hit, I had an opportunity to report a story about mental health in migrant communities in the Mexico-US border. And as a part of the reporting trip, we went to the Ciudad Juarez, city, Texas, Ciudad Juarez. And I remember walking around the streets in Ciudad Juarez, a city that is been very, very famous, for killing women, for its violence, and feeling that the only reason why I could feel safe-ish doing my work, it's because I was not alone. I was with a colleague and he was a man. Like there are things that I wish that I could do that sometimes I second guess myself because I want to stay safe.
Yeah, and I think that the relationship with men, it should be teamwork. No, we are not competing with them, but we
Mhm.
are complementing. So
Yeah.
I think that's we can be getting that support as well. Okay. Do you think stage fright of researchers has reduced recently or no? As what is your perception? Do you think scientists are becoming more comfortable with communicating?
I mean, I couldn't say there are many scientists in the world. In my experience, it I think scientists are becoming more maybe secure or are understanding more the role that they play and that communication has to be a part of it. Sometimes in my line of work, scientists don't want to talk because right now, considering all the political uh, things that are happening, it's that they are afraid of speak. Which I have to say also, for those scientists who do speak, thank you and thank you for being so brave. Uh, but I think it's becoming more important for scientists, and they are becoming more aware that communication is important. Yes.
Thank you so much. What kinds of support do you cultivate for yourself to keep your good experience, your spirits high? Do you have network you tap into, or hobbies you pursue, or other sources of inspiration?
Well, yes, I do go with my network a lot. I think for me, a big part of my personal journey, I think it's understanding that I need to stop comparing myself to the network that I belong to. Like comparison usually has led me to believe that I'm falling behind, and that usually leads me not to engage with my network in a more sustainable way. Once I finally understood that everyone has their own journey and everyone's living their own journey in different ways, that's how I can actually engage with them in a more wholehearted way. Uh, Outside of my networks, in which I really find a lot of help and inspiration. For example, right now I have another friend, and she and I every Friday, we connect. Like how was your week? It's like we call it our accountability meetings. Like okay, you told me that you were going to do this pitch. You told me that you were going to interview this person. You told me that you were going to write this feature. How did it go? Um, I am feeling really really anxious right now because I feel like that I forgot how to pitch. Okay, let me help you. Like that's a way. Internally, the another thing that helps me is just try to imagine the life that I want and that I want to continue building, and just to remember that my every day I try to find something fun to do. If I can't find it in my work, because there are days and days. Sometimes I find I have an amazing interview and I'm feeling really really wired, because this was the best interview of the year. There are other days when it's like I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life, but I try to do something fun. I try to read a book. I try to go outside and walk. Try to clear my mind. Take some pictures. Just take care of my mental health.
Yeah, that's very important balance, no, and also to find those social connections and the nature connection. It's very important as well. So,
Mhm.
what advice do you have for organizations? And this question is for both of you, Miriam and our interviewer of today. What advice do you have for organizations like CIMIT who are working to promote diverse leadership? What advice would you give to truly help grow and support its women and young leaders?
The best advice that I have is to understand that diverse leaders are going to come from diverse backgrounds and diverse stories. Do not expect to hire a diverse leader who has all the same accolades and all the same awards and all the same career path that the rest of people. Sometimes we come from a resume may not look as well or as structured as the not so much diverse person, but that's because we basically had to face more challenges and jump more hoops. uh, Try to see the person behind that. Try to see the person jumping the hoops. Try to question the person, like, okay, I see this gap in your resume, maybe, like what happened here? and actually take the time to listen to the person. Like if you actually understand that gap came with a lot of personal growth, then you understand that is going to be someone who has the experience that you need, but also has the personal experience to build an organization and to work with more people, to push more people up.
Thank you, Ojimbo.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I totally agree with Myriam. So I think CIMMYT is already on the right track, at least with platforms such as Catalyst for Change that is inspiring people to advance equity and inclusion, and also with the JC initiative. So I think that's a good way to start, but a lot more can still be done because there's always room for improvement.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So Myriam, what words of wisdom could you share with the audience as our takeaway?
Words of wisdom. Try to be patient and try to be kind to yourselves. Life is a journey. Sometimes we have to start over, for whatever reason happens, and that it's okay. You're not really starting over, even it may feel like you are. You're just recalculating the route, So if you can learn that, if you can try to stay present, and if you can understand that everything passes and that you're going to be in a different place later, you can also learn from that experience as well. So give yourself permission to start over and over and over again as many times as you need to, as many times as you want. Because every time that you start over, you're bringing all the experiences that you had before. So it's not really back to square one.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we are in time to conclude our seminar of today. So on behalf of Dr. Brian Govers, Director General of CIMMYT, we thank Myriam so much for sharing with us your outstanding professional and personal journey. Also, we thank Ojimbo for this very interesting conversation having with you. And we thank the audience that joined today. And we invite you to the following Catalyst of Change, Advancing Equity and Inclusion in Science seminar in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.